3 years had passed since that desperate day when a hungry boy had stood outside a convenience store with his baby sister in his arms. On this bright Saturday morning, the small community market buzzed with activity as vendors set up their stalls and early customers browsed the colorful displays. In the center of the market stood a neat booth with a blue sign that read Dia's Family Crafts. Lucia arranged her handmade wooden boxes, painted bowls, and embroidered cloths carefully on the table. At 32, she stood straight and confident, only a slight limp revealing the accident that had changed her family's path. Mama, the new necklaces should go in front, suggested 11-year-old Matteo, who was helping set up the stall. People always look there first. Lucia smiled at her son. Matteo had grown tall and strong, his serious eyes now quick to light up with laughter. Top of his class at school, he proudly wore the uniform of a student who had earned a special scholarship for children who showed exceptional promise. Elena, please don't touch the paint. It's still wet, Lucia called to her daughter, who was examining a freshly painted flower pot. 4-year-old Elena, with her bright eyes and curious fingers, looked up innocently. It's pretty, Mama. Can I make one too? Later at home, Lucia promised. Now go sit with Mrs. Torres, she's waiting for you. The elderly woman at the next stall waved to Elena, who skipped over happily. Since recovering from her injuries, Lucia had become the manager of the women's cooperative, teaching new members the skills she had learned. The co-op had grown from 12 women to 25, with regular orders coming from shops in the capital city. As the market opened officially, Lucia's first customer of the day was a familiar face. Good morning, Carlos greeted, now dressed in the formal clothes of a school principal. Last year, he had been promoted when the old principal retired. Everything looks beautiful today. Thank you, Lucia said warmly. Will you join us for dinner tomorrow? Matteo wants to show you his science project. Carlos nodded. I wouldn't miss it. He selected a painted box from the display. This one reminds me of the view from your new balcony. Lucia's family now lived in a small apartment they had purchased with help from a government program for working single parents. After saving carefully for 2 years, they had made the down payment 6 months ago. The apartment had 2 bedrooms, a small balcony with flower pots, and most importantly, it was truly theirs. Later that afternoon, as the market was closing, Lucia noticed a young woman standing hesitantly near her stall. The woman held a baby in her arms and had a toddler clutching her skirt. Her clothes were clean but worn, and her eyes held the tired, worried look Lucia recognized all too well. May I help you? Lucia asked gently. The woman looked down. I heard the co-op sometimes takes new members. I can sew a little, and I need work that lets me be with my children. Instead of immediately answering, Lucia looked at the children. The baby was thin but clean, and the toddler's eyes were bright despite his shabby clothes. What's your name? Lucia asked. Rosa, the woman answered. My husband left last year. I've been doing washing for people, but it's not enough. Lucia remembered the crushing weight of being alone with young children, the fear of not having enough food for the next day. She made a quick decision. The co-op meets on Monday at 10, she said, writing down the address. Come see me there. And Rosa. Lucia reached into her cash box and took out some money. Buy something good for your children tonight. Tears filled Rosa's eyes. I'll pay it back, I promise. No, Lucia shook her head, smiling. Just help someone else someday when you can. As Rosa walked away, Matteo appeared at his mother's side. Who was that? Someone who needs help, Lucia explained, the way we once did. Matteo nodded thoughtfully. Like when I asked Carlos to take Elena because she was hungry. Yes, Lucia said, putting her arm around her son's shoulders. That day, you were so brave. You didn't know it then, but when you asked for help, you changed all our lives. As they packed up their unsold crafts, Matteo helped his mother carry the heavier boxes to their small car, a recent purchase they were immensely proud of. Elena chattered happily about her day as they drove home through the town where they had once been strangers needing help, and were now a family giving help to others. The circle was complete. Carlos walked beside Matteo, who still held Elena carefully in his small arms. The baby had fallen asleep after finishing the formula, her face peaceful for the first time in days. They turned down a narrow dirt path that led to a cluster of small homes with faded blue walls and tin roofs. That one, Mateo pointed to the smallest house at the end of the row. As they approached, Carlos noticed the broken front step and the torn window screen. A clothesline hung empty in the side yard. The door wasn't fully closed, and Mateo pushed it open with his shoulder, stepping into the dim one-room dwelling. "This is where we live," he said simply. Carlos followed him inside and had to pause to let his eyes adjust to the darkness. The space was neat but desperately poor. Two thin mattresses lay on the floor in the corner. A small table with three mismatched chairs stood near a makeshift kitchen area. There was no refrigerator, just a small cooler box. Carlos noticed how clean everything was despite the poverty, a mother's pride clearly visible in the swept floor and folded blankets. "Where does your mother keep the food?" Carlos asked gently. Mateo walked to a small cabinet and opened it. Inside were 2 cans of beans, a half-empty bag of rice, and nothing else. The boy pointed to a plastic container on the counter. "Elena's formula was in there, but it's all gone now." Carlos placed the groceries he had bought on the table and carefully took Elena from Mateo, placing her on one of the mattresses. The boy's arms trembled with relief after holding his sister for so long. "When did you last eat, Mateo?" The boy thought for a moment. "Yesterday morning. I saved the last food for Elena." Carlos quickly made Mateo a sandwich with the bread and cheese, which the boy ate slowly, trying not to seem too hungry. As he ate, Carlos explored the tiny home, looking for clues about their mother's disappearance. On a nail in the wall hung a faded photograph of a young woman with Mateo as a toddler. She had the same large eyes as her son, and her smile revealed the same dimple in her left cheek. Next to the photo was a work schedule written on a piece of paper. Carlos studied it carefully. "Your mother cleans for the Morales family on Mondays, the Vega house on Tuesdays," Carlos read aloud. "Yes," Mateo nodded, finishing his sandwich. "She went to the Vega house on Tuesday morning. She said she might have a new job too, at a hotel in the next town. She was very happy about it." Carlos checked the date. It was now Friday. Something had happened on Tuesday. "Did your mother leave a number to call? Or does she have a phone?" Mateo shook his head. "We don't have a phone. Sometimes she uses Mrs. Vega's phone to call our neighbor Rosa to check on us." "Is Rosa nearby? Has she been helping you?" "Rosa went to visit her sister in the city last week," Mateo explained. "She doesn't know we're alone." Carlos sighed, realizing how completely isolated these children had been. He took out his own phone and called the police to report Lucia missing. Then he called his friend Maria, who worked at the hospital, to ask if any unidentified women had been brought in recently. While making these calls, Carlos watched as Mateo carefully changed Elena's diaper using one of the few clean cloths left in the house. The boy's hands moved with practiced care, showing how much responsibility had fallen on his young shoulders. "Mateo," Carlos said when he finished his calls, "I need to take you and Elena somewhere safe while we look for your mother." Fear flashed across the boy's face. "Will they separate us? I promised Mama I would take care of Elena." Carlos knelt down to look Mateo in the eyes. "I will do everything I can to keep you together. And I promise you this, you will find your mother." For the first time since they met, a small, hopeful smile appeared on Mateo's tired face. The social services office was busy that Friday afternoon. Mateo sat stiffly in a plastic chair, holding Elena close to his chest. His eyes darted nervously around the room, taking in the tired-looking adults and the few children who played with worn toys in the corner. Carlos sat beside him, filling out paperwork with a kind-faced woman named Mrs. Ortiz. "We need to find emergency placement for the children while we search for their mother," Mrs. Ortiz explained. "Usually, we would place them in separate homes. Babies have different needs than older children." Mateo's arms tightened around Elena. "No," he whispered. "I promised Mama." Carlos placed a gentle hand on the boy's shoulder. "Is there any way to keep them together?" he asked Mrs. Ortiz. "The boy has been caring for his sister. Separating them now would only cause more trauma." Mrs. Ortiz looked at the pair with sympathetic eyes. "It's difficult, but..." She hesitated, then smiled. The Domingo family might be able to take both children. They'd have fostered siblings before. While they waited, a police officer named Officer Reyes arrived to take down more details about Lucia's disappearance. Mateo answered each question carefully, his voice growing stronger as he spoke about his mother. "She wears a blue dress for work," he told the officer. And she has a silver cross necklace that was my grandmother's. She never takes it off. Officer Reyes wrote everything down. We've already sent officers to the Vega house and to all the hospitals in the area. We'll find her, son. By evening, Mateo and Elena were settled in the Domingo home, a warm, bustling household with 2 other foster children. Mrs. Domingo, a round woman with quick hands and a quicker smile, showed Mateo where he and Elena would sleep. Your sister's crib will be right next to your bed, she assured him. You can see her all night if you want. For the first time in days, Mateo allowed someone else to hold Elena as Mrs. Domingo gave the baby a proper bath and fresh clothes. The boy watched every move, only relaxing when Elena giggled as warm water touched her tiny toes. Meanwhile, Carlos drove across town to the wealthy neighborhood where the Vega family lived. The large house stood behind an ornate iron gate, with perfectly trimmed hedges lining the driveway. Carlos rang the bell, and after a long wait, a tall woman in expensive clothes answered. Mrs. Vega, I'm Carlos Mendoza. I'm helping the police with their search for Lucia Diaz, your housekeeper. Mrs. Vega frowned. Lucia stopped coming to work 3 days ago. No call, nothing. After all we've done for her, too. Very unprofessional. Carlos felt a spark of anger at the woman's cold tone, but kept his voice even. Her children have been alone all this time. Did she mention any plans? Perhaps a new job? Something flickered across Mrs. Vega's face, concern, or perhaps guilt. She did mention something about a hotel job in Jinotega. The pay was better. She hesitated. I didn't know she had children alone at home. Is there anything I can do? Her wages, Carlos said firmly. If she's owed any money, it could help her children. Mrs. Vega disappeared inside and returned with an envelope. 2 weeks' pay. I was holding it until she explained herself. Carlos took the envelope and thanked her, though the words tasted bitter in his mouth. That night, as darkness fell over the town, the search for Lucia continued. Police officers checked bus stations and hospitals. Carlos called everyone he knew in Jinotega about hotels that might have hired a new cleaning woman. At the Domingo house, Mateo lay awake, watching his sister sleep peacefully in her borrowed crib. For the first time since his mother disappeared, he allowed himself to cry quietly, no longer needing to be strong every moment. Outside his window, the moon cast silver light across the town where, somewhere, his mother might be looking at the same moon, trying to find her way back to her children. 5 days had passed since Mateo and Elena came to stay with the Domingo family. Though they were safe and well-fed, Mateo grew more worried each day. He sat by the window every afternoon, watching the street, hoping to see his mother walking toward the house. Mrs. Domingo noticed how the boy barely touched his food, and how he whispered stories to his baby sister about their mother coming back soon. Any news? Mrs. Domingo asked Carlos when he came to visit the children on Wednesday. Carlos shook his head. We checked every hospital in town. Nothing. The police had expanded their search to nearby towns, focusing on Jinotega, where Lucia might have gone for the hotel job. Officer Reyes had put Lucia's photo in all the local newspapers. People from the church and neighborhood joined the search, putting up flyers with Lucia's picture and description. That afternoon, while Mateo played with Elena in the living room, the phone rang. Mrs. Domingo answered, her face growing serious as she listened. Carlos, she called urgently. It's the police. They want you to come to the station right away. Mateo overheard and froze, his young face suddenly pale. He knew what it meant when police called people to the station in the TV shows he sometimes watched. Bad news. Very bad news. Did they find Mama? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. Carlos knelt beside the boy. I don't know yet, Mateo. I'll go find out and come right back. I promise. At the police station, Officer Reyes met Carlos with a grim expression. We got a call from San Pedro Hospital in Jinotega. They have a woman who matches Lucia's description. She was in a bus accident on the highway to Jinotega last Tuesday. Is she? Carlos couldn't finish the question. She's alive, Officer Reyes said quickly. But she's been unconscious since the accident. She had no ID with her. Yesterday, she finally woke up and gave them her name. Carlos felt a rush of relief followed by deep concern. How bad is it? Broken leg, broken ribs, head injury. But the doctors say she will recover. She's been asking for her children since she woke up. Within an hour, Carlos and Officer Reyes were driving the 50 miles to Jinotega, with special permission to bring Mateo to see his mother. They decided to leave baby Elena with Mrs. Domingo, as the trip might be too difficult for her. Mateo sat quietly in the back seat, clutching a small drawing he had made for his mother. His eyes were wide as they drove through the mountains, past small farms and coffee plantations. "Is Mama really okay?" he asked several times. "She's hurt," Carlos explained honestly. "The doctors are helping her get better." At the hospital, a tired-looking doctor led them to a room on the second floor. "She's weak, but she's been asking for her son nonstop," the doctor told them. "The accident was bad. The bus went off the road on a sharp turn. 3 people died. She's lucky to be alive." The doctor opened the door, and Mateo saw his mother lying in the hospital bed. Her face was bruised, and her leg was in a cast. Tubes connected her to machines that beeped steadily. For a moment, the boy stood frozen in the doorway, afraid to move forward. "Mateo." Lucia's voice was weak but filled with love. "Is that really you, my son?" "Mama." Mateo ran to her side, careful not to touch her injuries. Tears streamed down his face as Lucia reached out with her uninjured arm to stroke his hair. "Where is Elena? Is she okay?" Lucia asked, her voice shaking with worry. "Elena is fine, Mama. I took care of her just like I promised," Mateo said proudly. "A nice teacher helped us. His name is Carlos." Carlos stepped forward, meeting Lucia's tearful gaze. "Your son is very brave," he told her. "He did everything he could to protect his sister." Lucia held her son's hand tightly. "I was on my way to a new job," she explained, her voice weak. "The bus crashed. I couldn't call. I couldn't tell anyone." Her eyes filled with tears. "I was so afraid for my children." Mateo pressed his small drawing into his mother's hand. "Don't cry, Mama. We found you," he said simply. "And now you can come home when you're better." Outside the hospital room, Officer Reyes and Carlos spoke quietly while Mateo sat with his mother. The road to recovery would be long, but at least now they knew the truth. Lucia was alive, and her children would not be left alone in the world. News of Lucia's accident spread quickly through the small town. By Sunday morning, after the priest mentioned the family's situation during Mass, people gathered outside the church to discuss how they could help. Many remembered seeing Lucia cleaning homes or walking with her children to the market. Some had noticed Mateo's absence from school, but hadn't realized the reason behind it. "The poor children," said Mrs. Flores, who ran the local bakery. "All alone while their mother was in the hospital." "And the mother," added Mr. Gonzalez, the hardware store owner. "She'll be unable to work for months with those injuries." Carlos stood among the townspeople, listening to their concern. He had just returned from his second visit to Lucia at the hospital. Her condition was stable, but the doctors said she would need at least 6 weeks before she could even attempt to walk with crutches. Her head injury would require careful monitoring, and her broken ribs made every breath painful. "Lucia has no family nearby to help," Carlos explained to the group. "And she's worried sick about her children and how they will manage." "What can we do?" someone asked. Father Miguel, the parish priest, stepped forward. "We must act as family for those who have none," he said simply. "Lucia and her children need us now." That afternoon, in the church basement, the community organized itself. Mrs. Rodriguez, who taught sewing at the local school, would coordinate clothing donations. Mr. Perez, who owned the furniture shop, offered a proper bed and crib. The owner of the pharmacy promised to help with medical supplies Lucia would need during recovery. "The children need stability," Carlos pointed out. "Mateo should return to school as soon as possible." Mrs. Torres, the school principal, nodded in agreement. "We'll make sure he catches up on the lessons he's missed." The Domingo family agreed to keep caring for the children until Lucia could come home. "They are settling in well," Mrs. Domingo reported. "Elena smiles more now, and Mateo has started eating properly again." Meanwhile, at the hospital in Jinotega, Lucia faced difficult news from her doctors. "The break in your leg was severe," Dr. Morales explained. "You'll need physical therapy to walk properly again, and with your head injury, you must avoid any heavy lifting or strenuous work for at least 6 months." Lucia's face crumpled with worry. "But doctor, I clean houses. It's the only work I know. How will I feed my children?" "One step at a time," the doctor said kindly. First, you must heal. Later that day, Carlos visited Lucia again, bringing drawings from Mateo and photos of Elena playing with toys at the Domingo home. Lucia's face brightened at these glimpses of her children, but Carlos could see the worry behind her smile. The whole town is helping, Carlos assured her. You're not alone in this. Lucia looked down at her hands. I've always taken care of my own problems, she said quietly. After my husband left, I promised myself I would never depend on others. Sometimes letting people help is a kind of strength, Carlos said. Your children need you to get better. That's your job now. For the first time since the accident, Lucia allowed herself to cry, not tears of pain or fear, but of relief. Someone else understood how hard it had been, carrying the weight of her family alone. Back in town, Mateo sat on the Domingo's front porch, watching other children play in the street. A small girl approached him shyly. My mama says your mama is in the hospital, she said. Mateo nodded, expecting teasing or unwanted pity. Instead, the girl held out a small handmade card. We made this in Sunday school for her. All of us signed it. Mateo took the card, surprised to see dozens of children's signatures inside. Some he recognized from his class, others were strangers. Thank you, he said, feeling less alone. That evening, as Mrs. Domingo rocked Elena to sleep, Mateo carefully placed the card on the small table next to his bed. For the first time in many nights, he fell asleep quickly, without fear of what tomorrow might bring. The knowledge that so many people cared made his heart feel lighter than it had in a very long time. 3 weeks after the accident, Lucia was finally released from the hospital. Her body was healing. The doctors warned that her recovery would be long and difficult. She would need crutches to walk and could not lift anything heavier than a book, not even her baby Elena. This news broke Lucia's heart, but she was determined to be with her children again. The biggest problem was housing. Lucia could not return to her small blue house with its broken steps and far distance from the medical center where she needed therapy twice a week. She had no money for rent elsewhere, and the thought of becoming homeless with injured legs and 2 small children terrified her. We found a solution, Carlos told her as he helped her into his car outside the hospital. The church has a small house behind the parish office. It's usually for visiting priests, but Father Miguel is offering it to you until you're back on your feet. Lucia's eyes widened. But I cannot pay. It's not about payment, Carlos said gently. Sometimes we must allow others to be kind. The small house was simple but clean, with a bedroom for Lucia, a small room where Mateo and Elena could sleep, and a kitchen with a table and chairs donated by Mr. Perez's furniture shop. Most importantly, it had no steps and was only 2 blocks from the medical center. The first day in their temporary home was difficult. Mateo watched his mother struggle with the crutches, her face tight with pain despite her efforts to hide it. Elena cried and reached for Lucia, not understanding why her mother couldn't pick her up. I'm sorry, my love, Lucia whispered to her baby girl, tears in her eyes. Mama can't hold you yet. Mrs. Domingo had agreed to help during the day while Mateo was at school, caring for Elena and helping with household tasks. But at night, it was just Lucia and her children trying to find a new normal. That evening, after Elena finally fell asleep, Mateo sat beside his mother on the small couch. Mama, he said quietly, are you sad? Lucia looked at her son's serious face and felt a rush of love. He had grown older somehow in the weeks they were apart. I'm sad that I can't do everything I want to do, she admitted. But I'm very happy to be with you and Elena again. That's the most important thing. Mateo nodded. Carlos says you'll get stronger every day if you do your exercises. Carlos says many wise things. Lucia smiled slightly. He has been very kind to our family. In the weeks that followed, Lucia worked hard at her physical therapy. The pain was terrible some days, making her want to give up, but she pushed through for her children. The medical bills were covered by a special fund the community had created, though Lucia insisted on knowing the exact amount so she could repay it someday. Carlos visited often, sometimes bringing Mateo home from school, other times just stopping by with groceries or books. He had learned that Lucia loved to read but rarely had time for it before. Now, with her forced rest, books became her window to the world. You're making good progress, Dr. Sanchez told Lucia at her 6-week checkup, but you still can't return to cleaning houses. The lifting and bending would undo all your healing. Lucia's face fell. I need to work, doctor. My children. Your health comes first, the doctor insisted. There are other kinds of work that don't require physical strain. Have you thought about what else you might do? On the way home, Lucia was unusually quiet. Carlos, who had driven her to the appointment, glanced at her with concern. Bad news? He asked. Not bad, Lucia said slowly. Just difficult. I need to find a new way to support my family, but I don't know how. Cleaning is all I've done since I was 16. Carlos was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled. Actually, I might have an idea. There's a women's cooperative that helps mothers learn new skills. Would you be interested in hearing more about it? For the first time in weeks, Lucia felt a spark of hope. Yes, she said. I would like that very much. Hashtag, sir, please take my baby sister. She's hungry, the boy said and cried. Hashtag part 7, a new beginning. 6 months after the accident, the small house behind the church was filled with colorful fabrics, beads, and half-finished crafts. Lucia sat at the table, her hands moving skillfully as she painted delicate flowers on a wooden box. Her crutches leaned against the wall, used less frequently now that she could walk short distances with only a slight limp. Mama, look what I made. Mateo called as he burst through the door, home from school. He proudly held up a math test with a large A marked in red at the top. Lucia put down her paintbrush and smiled. That's wonderful, my son. I'm so proud of you. In her playpen nearby, Alina stood holding onto the edge, bouncing excitedly at her brother's arrival. At 1 year old now, she was trying to walk, taking wobbly steps when someone held her hands. The women's cooperative had changed Lucia's life. 3 afternoons each week, she joined 12 other women, mostly single mothers or wives of disabled workers, to learn crafts they could sell at the market. Lucia discovered she had a talent for painting and design. Her wooden boxes, decorated with birds and flowers, sold quickly at the Saturday market. The income wasn't as steady as her cleaning jobs had been, but it was enough to buy food and save a little each week. Most importantly, the work didn't strain her still healing body, and she could do much of it at home while watching Alina. A knock at the door interrupted their conversation. Carlos stepped in, carrying a large envelope. Good afternoon, he greeted them. I have news. Mateo ran to hug his favorite teacher. Over the months, Carlos had become a constant in their lives, helping with homework, driving Lucia to medical appointments, and always bringing small treats for the children. What news? Lucia asked, noticing the serious look on his face. Carlos handed her the envelope. Remember the government housing program we applied for? The one for families affected by medical hardship? Lucia nodded, her hands trembling slightly as she opened the envelope. 3 months ago, Carlos had helped her fill out many complicated forms. The program offered affordable apartments to families who couldn't afford regular housing due to medical expenses or disability. We got it, she whispered, reading the letter. An apartment in the new building near the school. 2 bedrooms, with reduced rent based on our income. Mateo's eyes grew wide. Our own place? Really, Mama? Lucia nodded, too overcome with emotion to speak. After living in temporary housing for half a year, depending on the church's charity, they would finally have a home of their own again. Carlos smiled. The best part is that the building has an elevator, so no stairs to climb, and it's only 2 blocks from your school, Mateo. That evening, after the children were asleep, Lucia and Carlos sat on the small porch, drinking coffee and looking at the stars. I don't know how to thank you, Lucia said quietly, for everything. Carlos shook his head. Seeing your family recover is thanks enough. He hesitated. Do you remember the day I first met Mateo? Lucia nodded. She would never forget the story of how her brave son had approached a stranger, begging him to take baby Elena because she was hungry. The memory still brought tears to her eyes. I was just a teacher walking out of a store, Carlos continued. But something made Mateo trust me. That trust changed my life too, you know. How? Lucia asked, surprised. Before I met your family, I lived only for my work. I taught my students, went home to my empty apartment, and did the same thing the next day. He looked at the stars. Now I understand what it means to be part of something bigger. A community, a family. Lucia felt warmth spread through her chest that had nothing to do with the coffee. For so long, she had carried her burdens alone, believing that independence meant never asking for help. Now she understood that true strength sometimes meant allowing others to walk beside you. As they sat in comfortable silence, Lucia made a silent promise to herself. Someday, when she was fully recovered and established in their new home, she would find ways to help others as her family had been helped. The circle of kindness would continue, growing stronger with each new link.